Good morning and welcome to Toronto Police Headquarters. Today I would like to introduce Inspector Peter Callaghan of Toronto Police Financial Crimes, along with Inspector Ann Koenig of the RCMP's Integrated Market Enforcement Team. They will be providing a multi-jurisdictional $1 million financial crimes investigation update.
Good morning. Beginning on Thursday, September 14th, 2017, and continuing until Tuesday, September the 19th, 2017, members of the Toronto Police Service Financial Crimes Unit, in partnership with the RCMP's Integrated Market Enforcement Team, made a series of arrests in Project Briscola. Briscola was a complex investigation into the activities of a criminal enterprise engaged in fraudulently obtaining cash from leasing companies. In total, the 16 leases involved resulted in total losses of over $11.5 million. Let me briefly explain to you how the fraudulent leases worked. One of the individuals involved would approach a bank or a finance company, presenting themselves as an officer of a business planning to expand. The financial institutions were then told a misleading story that the money would be used to purchase new machinery for the business. The borrower would provide specific information on the machinery being acquired and direct payment of the money to a second company. In reality, the two companies were working together and the money would ultimately flow back to the benefit of the perpetrators. How were they able to pull this off? On many occasions, the lender did not ask for specific details about the machinery. Sometimes the lender was given a photo depicting the machine the borrower claimed to have acquired. If the lender inquired further, the lender was taken to a factory and shown a machine which was usually very old, not in operation, and was worth a fraction of what had been borrowed. How did the scheme go undetected for so long? It's not unusual for a business to fail or for a legitimate business to fall on hard times and have trouble meeting their financial obligations. The lenders pursued these losses as they normally would. They attempted to negotiate with the business, they tried to recover the equipment, or they sued the business. Ultimately, the accused persons profited over $1.5 million, 9.2 million Canadian and 2.3 million US. None of this would have come to light if it weren't for an impaired driving arrest. On Thursday, August 6, 2015, Giuseppe Gatti was arrested for impaired driving. At the time of his arrest, he was carrying over $3,700 in Canadian currency, over $6,800 in American currency, and he also had 7 credit cards on him, 3 of which did not bear the name Giuseppe Gatti. The information ultimately led the arresting officers to contact the Financial Crimes Unit, and this investigation began. As part of this investigation, the investigators made inquiries with FINTRAC. FINTRAC is the federal government's financial intelligence unit. They monitor large financial transactions in an effort to prevent and detect money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities. FINTRAC identified several suspicious transactions involving Gatti and individuals with the same names as those printed on the credit cards Gatti was carrying at the time of his arrest. Financial crimes investigations involve a very complex process that involves interviewing witnesses, writing production orders to obtain financial records, interpreting those records in the light of the evidence we have already obtained, and then starting the cycle of interviewing witnesses and writing more production orders until we locate all the necessary evidence. Think of it as building a large puzzle whose pieces are scattered all over the world. When we begin, we have no idea what the final image will look like. Each piece helps to reveal the picture. A single piece of the puzzle may not seem to fit until several more pieces are located and the image comes into focus. It's a long and tedious process. In this case, we had the assistance of the Ministry of Finance, who were able to do the forensic accounting work that allowed us to follow the money through numerous companies and individuals. The money flowed across Canada into the United States, to Brazil, the Seychelles, Hong Kong, and Australia. Ultimately, the accounting work established that the money landed in the accounts of the accused persons. In cooperation with the RCMP, the following people have been arrested and charged. Faisal Iqbal Qureshi, 42, of Richmond Hill, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000, and 1 count of participating in a criminal organization. Giuseppe Gatti, 48, of Ajax, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000 and participating in a criminal organization. Tara Bracken, 47, of Whitby, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000. Daryl Schulman, 49, of Thornhill, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000 and 1 count of participating in a criminal organization. Mary Sophie Kalotzi, 35, of Georgetown, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000 and participating in a criminal organization. Maurizio Adaletta, 53, of Brampton, 14 counts of fraud over $5,000 and participating in a criminal organization. Pino Frank Guido, 53, of Kleinburg, fraud over $5,000 and possession of proceeds of crime. Eric Thomas, 57, of Mississauga, fraud over $5,000. Sanjeev Manan, 48, of Locust Hill, fraud over $5,000. Laura Tolosa, 37, of Toronto, fraud over $5,000. Cosmo Camiso, 72, of Vaughan, possession of proceeds of crime. And Ravinder Bedi, 54, of Brampton, fraud over $5,000. All of the accused are scheduled to appear in court at the Old City Hall on October 26, 2017 at 9 a.m. Project Briscola could not have been possible without the collaboration of local, national, and international partners. The Toronto Police Service would like to thank the RCMP's Integrated Market Enforcement Team, the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Houston, Texas Field Office, and the Jacksonville, Florida Field Office, the State Bureau of Investigation in Texas, the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, Canadian Border Services Agency, FinTrack, the United States Department of Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, the Ontario Ministry of Finance, Canada Revenue Agency, and BMO's Forensic Intelligence Unit. We believe there may be other lenders out there who may have been defrauded in a similar fashion. We encourage them to contact us. We would also appreciate hearing from anyone with information about these offenses. They are asked to contact the lead investigator, Detective Rick Ranjatin, at 416-808-7825 or contact Crime Stoppers at 222-TIPS. I'd like to call upon Inspector Ann Koenig of the RCMP for a few comments.
Good morning. Thank you, Inspector Callaghan. Economic integrity is the priority of the RCMP with a focus on preventing, detecting, and deterring crimes that affect the Canadian economy, as well as educating Canadians on how to prevent fraud. Money, banking institutions, and financial markets are extremely important to our Canadian modern economy. Investor confidence is crucial to the efficient functioning of Canada's capital markets and to the economy as a whole. Maintaining Canada's economic integrity is a complex issue that must be tackled in cooperation with other law enforcement agencies, governments at all levels, the private sector, and our international partners. The Toronto Integrated Market Enforcement Team works closely with our law enforcement agencies, securities regulators, representatives of other federal and provincial enforcement agencies, as well as forensic accountants. The charges described to you today by Inspector Callaghan highlight the success of these partnerships with the valuable exchange of knowledge and expertise that has resulted in our ability to protect the Canadian economy from the efforts of organized crime. I would like to thank the Toronto Police Service and the Ministry of Finance for their partnership. In addition, thanking all the partners, other partners mentioned by my colleague, Inspector Callaghan. I would also like to mention my thanks to other divisions of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who assisted in this investigation, specifically our International Liaison Program. I am confident that together we have the ability to protect investors, maintain their confidence, and safeguard the stability of our Canadian economic markets. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions if anyone has some questions.
Were you able to recover any of that money?
Efforts are underway to recover. Some of the money has been recovered, and efforts are underway to recover more of it now.
So with all the people you named, that they all have personal relationships amongst themselves?
There's a relationship among a core group of the individuals. Some of the individuals only had minor roles, and they had a connection with one of the main individuals. We're not going to get into describing the network of who was connected to who. You'll have to follow the case in the criminal courts. That's part of the evidence that will be presented in the courts.
So when we as customers, let's say our credit card gets defrauded, our bank will cover our loss. What happens when the bank receives these kind of losses? How do they recover it?
The bank is the one that's going to be bearing the loss. So it's easy to portray this as a large bank, a large corporate entity is going to take on this loss. But that bank represents all the investors in the bank and all the customers in the bank. So ultimately, the customers pay for that in higher fees. The investors are going to suffer those losses in lost dividends paid out. That could mean that your pension fund, the mutual fund you invest in, suffers that loss, and small individual investors are going to suffer that loss. Small businesses are going to pay the price for this as well, because the banks are going to become stricter in how they give out and track that money. And so it's going to be harder for small businesses to get funds to expand their business or to start an initial business. So we all pay for those losses.
So did they come across as a small business, as a mid-sized business, or as a large business?
They presented themselves generally as a small or a mid-sized business.
Would Callaghan be at the head of this organization?
That's not how this network played out. Cosmo Camiso's name didn't initially come up in the investigation. It came up as we progressed through it. And as the money was being tracked, payments were shown, or we're alleging that going to Mr. Camiso, but that's not how the investigation began. And we're not alleging that he was had a directing role in this investigation.
Can you say where Gavin is, where he was arrested for driving or charged?
I'll have to get back to you after that. I believe it's in North York, but I'll have to confirm that for you. Any other questions?
That concludes today's conference. The inspectors will be here if you have any other questions.